Rashi. I'm talent manager at Hayward. I actually started my career almost 15, 16 years back in HR, but I actually started my overall career journey not in HR, but in sales. And that's something I really like to, highlight about myself, because I always felt there's something about sales you need to learn and get into the professional world of HR. HR was always in my heart. So I've done my graduation from Gargi College, and I always say I've done BCom pass and theatre honors, because I was in free theatre for 3 years. I was the president of the society in the final year, and we did so much out there in perspective building, and that's what made me more curious about humans, psychology. Why do people think differently? That behavioral science element actually was seeped in back then. I actually wanted to do psychology, by the way, but my parents were like, okay, that doesn't look like a great career opportunity. Why don't you do something in commerce? And then I realized probably HR is the closest I can get when it comes to psychology. So I was always clear I'm going to get in HR. Then, of course, my master's happened, and I wanted to, of course, do it from best of the best colleges. There is one thing I always tell myself: either go for the best or be the best where you are. And I think when I couldn't get through, and I always tell it to people who get through CAP, that I wasn't there. But whatever I got, I made the best out of it. That's how my philosophy is. I fortunately, was a gold medalist in my college, and that was something I had right from the day one. That's what I wanted. I want to ensure people see HR as a subject where you can talk, because I was told you cannot talk in HR. That's how I am coming from, somebody who likes to take challenges, somebody who wants to be told what cannot be done. And thank you so much. I have some ambition for me to take on. So that's where my HR journey started. I had a wonderful career in starting with Siemens company, Ostrom. So actually I'm a bit stable employee. So I've just worked in 2 companies so far. And this is almost like 8.5 years in one, and on almost 7 years now in the current company. But I would say that the journey has been quite different and not stable in its own way, because I've seen so many changes in the organization that I do feel confident about the change management part of HR. So that's where I have talent acquisition. Then the learning part was always strong, that I raised my hand wherever the opportunity was there. And then I got into the L&D piece, the HR business partnering piece. And today I am standing in, or I would say sitting in front of you, managing talent management fully in a full-fledged role, supporting the business directly from people's side. So that's a bit about me. And if I were to also highlight one of the highlight moments for me, so we were talking about this, Shreyasi, earlier, that we do, have our own moment of pride. For me, it was when I applied for this job-based 40 under 40. And of course, I didn't get the 40 under 40, but I feel super proud to be part of 100 under 40, because I think that's the moment when I felt that, yes, it's an assessment which is external. You're evaluated with the best of the best talent. And that's something which I take as a pride for me. So currently I'm working on multiple projects, and I'm getting certified in TTI. I'm DISC certified, and also both from Wiley and TTI. So my expertise, I would say, is getting a little more on the human behavioral side. And on the personal front, I got certified in NLP. If you're familiar with that, it's neuro-linguistic programming, not the technical NLP. Yeah. So that's where I thought that, I really want to be strong on the life coaching part as well. So that's on the personal side that I do use it for myself healing sometimes, and sometimes for my friends at this point of time.
That's
about me. Please go ahead. I'm happy to take the questions that you have in your mind.
Awesome. Over to Shreyasi, actually.
Wonderful. When you were introducing, and I was just trying to correlate so many common experiences we've had together, because even I started my career with sales.
Wow.
So I was into banking and, into stocks and selling stocks and dealing with HNI. So yeah, we really have a common this thing. And congratulations on your Jombay assessment, when I went through your LinkedIn profile, I was really intrigued to know more about the whole process. But I think that's for a separate offline conversation. But congratulations! I know I've worked with Zombie as a service provider in my role as an OD manager in my previous organization. So I know the good work that they do, and I was also introduced to this program, but unfortunately I didn't enroll for it. But I know it's a very big milestone. So Rashi, just to give you a little bit background, I'm not sure if Lakshita has already mentioned. Our endeavor as a company is not just to sort of sell our services to our clients. That's not what we are just aiming for. We are also aiming to build a thought leadership, a knowledge bank for ourselves within the company. Not just provide that service, but also to be part of a network, a part of a community that has that knowledge bank. And I think you are a wonderful addition to that, and hence this whole initiative of a podcast. And our discussion primarily revolves around the future of work, the current state of talent and skill sets, and how AI is going to change this overall landscape. So my first question to you is about this, and I'm fully aware that you have an overall HR domain expertise, and in your current OD role, I want to know more on the OD from the OD lens. What do you think? So basically, AI is automating a lot of managerial tasks, right? There's task switching happening. There's a lot of status updates and basic coordination, which is going away because AI is taking up all of these. So the competencies are changing of people. If you are in OD, the competencies are changing, the future skill sets are changing. So from an OD lens, if we remove those fake work layers, what is now the actual job of a new manager? And more proactively, what percentage of your current, say, management population has this psychological bandwidth and this relational capability to help managers step into that role? Or will you need to reselect for different traits? Like, how are you managing this? I mean, if I've articulated myself correctly.
No, I can get the sense of what you're trying to say, Shresi. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. It's a privilege and honor. And I do hope I'm able to contribute in whichever manner to the community who is going to, of course, see it or, value it from the angle that you are making this podcast. Now, coming to the lens, and I think it's a great question because, I had the opportunity of attending, I do attend multiple events in the industry, and I had in one of them opportunity to attend Dr. Reddy's session. He's known as the father of AI in India. So that was definitely a privilege, and I think that really helped me also build some sense on what you are trying to right now say. The competencies are changing for sure. The world is changing. The AI is here to stay. If you don't use AI word in your language, it looks like that you are not from Earth, because you cannot talk about anything without AI. However, one thing, and I'm not going to say what I feel at this point of time, but to start with what he said, because I thought that was really powerful. So what he said that is, in this world of AI, as humans, we need to learn three things, three key learnings he was talking about. One was learn to learn, because, the world is changing. It is not really the old ways of learning. You are really going to be given a new platform. So it really makes you more smarter in the sense of with AI being your personal tutor. So, but learn to learn how to use that. Second is learn to think. And I think that's a great competence differentiator. That's from where I'm coming and connecting it to your question. Learn to think. The critical thinking part, AI is not really doing, That's where your role comes into picture as humans and as leaders for that matter. And the third piece that he was mentioning was about learn to do. That's the execution piece. Okay, no one is going to take away that piece also from humans. Now that's a skill also, as competence, that your ability to getting things done. is also something that's going to be all the more prominent. Now, while there could be many things we can talk about in terms of competencies which are relevant, judgment, practical thinking, but at the end of the day, I think these three things really sum it up in a beautiful way that Dr. Reddy said, that what are the learning abilities or critical things which are going to matter in the future workforce. Now, if I were to add my personal angle over here in terms of what's really changing, I do see it as around combination of efficiency and effectiveness. Now, AI does bring a lot of efficiency in the system, right? It increases your mental capabilities beyond what you would have done without, for example, AI, because it does bring a lot of context. However, the efficiency part of system where the doing, the critical thinking, all those things also come in, is where humans come in picture. So the more efficiencies are being taken care of by AI, the more time you have as leaders to bring in the effectiveness part to it. It's like, we all have seen those memes, if you are on a wrong train, the best is that you get down sooner. Right now, I would like to put in this context, like AI can give you speed. AI will make it the best and the fastest in going, but are you going in the right direction? That's where effectiveness comes into picture, As humans, I think that's the role of probably leaders, wherein they come and see what is required to be on the right direction. I think just to sum it up, if I did answer your question, Shesi.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So
I just wanted to, sorry, Lakshit, Lakshit will ask the next set of questions, but just to top up on top of what you already said, like how are you, as an OD professional, how are you dealing with the real-time JDs? I know JDs are something that is an ongoing work.
Exactly.
It's a year-long work. A lot of founders, they think that you make one JD one time and you're done for life. But I know, being an OD professional, that JD is something that you have to work on every year because the job is evolving, the markets are evolving, and everything else is changing. So it's a continuous project for an OD professional. How are you dealing with that? Have you started adapting your JDs to AIs already?
See, I have always believed, even before AI was there, Shesi, and I've used that in my hiring as well. JD is the most dynamic document you need to have. You cannot have it as a static document. So if you don't have it as a dynamic document, you definitely are not connecting to the business needs, for that matter. Now, AI is coming into picture. Have we added AI in JD? If that's a question, not really at this point, unless you are really a technical person who is working on AI tools. As a salesperson, do we need AI as a knowledge or making it a part of your specification? Not really, because we aren't, yet there, I would say. And there is a research also that, probably 90+% organizations are maybe aiming at becoming AI driven. However, only 1% feel that they are AI ready or, AI mature. So there is a gap out there because I don't see it, especially in my industry. I would talk from our context at this point. We don't see it as becoming a need of something which really is part of your hiring decision at this point in time. That's still something organizations are providing once you join. Do we have those tools? Do we have that training for you to know about those tools, rather than expecting you should know? But I do know that in IT, there are companies which have really changed that, and they are really bringing in mandatory kind of skill set out there.
But yeah, Rashi, thank you for that, that reality bite, because that's very important, that where the world is taking us versus the reality of the transition time that it takes for an organization to get somewhere. So thank you for sharing that, and over to you, Lakshit.
Right. Lovely answer. What I want to now talk about is somewhat I am also really focused and keen on, which are soft skills, right? Soft skills, how, the importance of soft skills, I know you understand, but to quantify it, to measure it and show it as a real impact and value is a very difficult task, right? And again, in the world of AI, everybody is like, email ChatGPT se likhwa lo, Claude se ye karwa lo, but that is not what it is. So I know OD people like to give a lot of terms and names on how to do this, but my question here is very simple. One, how to quantify those soft skills, right? And how to show it to the revenue leaders or the CEOs, the top management, that improving on soft skills equates to direct revenue in the company. How can we do that, and how can we educate more both the people, the CEOs, the top management, and the candidates also to work on it, to prune that, to brush that?
Great question, Lakshit, and I think one of the most difficult question for any TM person, talent management or L&D person, that how do you show the ROI? How do you show that this is directly linked to what you are contributing in? See, I love the question also, like, soft skills are really not soft. They're the hardest to really learn and have real impact. In fact, I was attending one panel for a college, and for that I did a bit of study also on the impact part of it. Actually, only 12%, and it's not just one company I'm talking about. It's only 12% of the training that really result in the behavioral change. So, which directly influences and tells a lot about when soft skills we're talking about. We're really talking about behavioral change somewhere. The impact it brings on the business. And at this point of time, I'm just taking the second part of your question first here, which is how do you show the result on the business. The most difficult piece, and this is something I also personally have taken as a challenge here, we are trying to create some of those KPIs internally, tracking right from beginning, that how do you show that the soft skills. For us, it would be training or other interventions. Not really. We talk about 70-20-10 in our organization a lot. So it's also on the job what you're really doing in a structured way, which is impacting your business. It is a long road. It is not something I can give you an answer right away because it's always difficult. It's not linear. It's not that this happens and that happens. It's also multiple things in force. And you can never quantify what had the maximum impact, except an individual who knows that I would have taken a decision in a very different way versus because my thoughts are filtered now, I'm taking a different decision. And you cannot really get into the brain part of it. Now, coming to the first part, can we quantify that? There are certain organizations which are really looking at and the capacity utilization of the soft skills part of it. So which means that whatever the influence part, or you're talking about the common sense kind of personal skills as well. So how much are you utilizing it as in your capacity? There are ways and means, but are these available to everyone for us in a random way to decide and quantify that? Probably not, because it's a very, very nuanced thing. It needs assessments, it needs research, it definitely, a lot of work goes in that. And I would definitely, given a chance, I would call it them impact skills, the right way you used it. These are the impact skills, right? This is how you get the things done. And you differentiate one from other. Lakshit can have an impact in a different way versus Rashi, because we have a unique flavor of our own personal repository of skills. So yeah, I think at this point of time, there's still a long road to have that quantification done. But I think time will come where this will become so critical and such a differentiator that you would want to know that what is being brought on the table. I'm not sure if I answered your question, Lakshit. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to ask.
No, I think you answered it pretty well, and I got what I really wanted. Over to you, Shreyasi.
So I'm really intrigued to know one thing today, that in an organization, there are high performers and there are low performers. When someone is performing low, there are so many reasons to it. And because you did NLP, that's why I'm asking a little of the psychological part of the question. So when an employee is disengaged for XYZ reason, he or she tends to perform poorer than the rest. So in your role as an OD professional, how do you ensure that feedback for such low performers or coaching for those low performers or upskilling for those low performers are adequately captured and delivered to an organization, from an OD perspective, especially for disengaged employees, disengaged low performing employees?
So this is actually a very, very, I would say, nuanced and one of the most pertinent issues that we face, Shreyasi. And I would like to divide this probably into two elements here. One is the performance part of it, and the other is engagement part of it, right? Because the reasons for performance could be many, and when it is clubbed with disengagement, it has a very different meaning to it. We always say, and then that's what we talk about in our internal training programs as well, that non-performance is not just because a person's own motivation or personal reasons, and there is a full model out there, behavioral engineering model, wherein we talk about the 6 elements which influence performance. This is something wherein, and this is by Gilbert, where he really coined the term of performance engineering. What makes people perform? And I really love his work because he really talks about task level. That probably I am interested in doing a podcast versus somebody is going to tell me about some other task. Maybe my entire skill set would be very different for one task versus others. That's very, very, very nuanced here. But at the same time, that's where when you club it with disengagement, and this becomes really relevant, is BEI. Is the person disengaged because there is a lack of motivation, there is a lack of psychological safety, there is a lack of, full knowledge being given? The entire model is fully detailed. I'm not really getting into the depth of it, but where is it coming from? Or is it from the environment? Is the person not having enough resources to do it? And then there is a disconnect. Engagement is a function of many things, and one of them is tools and technology as well. So you need to really deep dive and see from where is it coming from a member perspective, because it's very easy for us to say, and it's a human nature, wherein we say that by default it could be a personal reason, wherein only 25% of the time it is personal, 75% of the time it's environment. So I think that's where we as HR or we as OD professionals or TM professionals need to deep dive and understand. Is it practical to do it for all the cases? Absolutely not. You need to train your managers for that. It's not really an HR's response. I would never say engagement is HR's responsibility. Engagement is manager's responsibility. Engagement is leadership responsibilities across the organization. It's definitely in the blood. It has to be in the blood. So that's from where that's from where I'm coming. I think, yes, if non-performance is coming, when we are looking at performance improvement plans also for that matter, at our organization, we definitely keep in our heart, our PIPs are not because we want somebody to send out. Our PIPs are because we want them to improve performance. We want to give them an opportunity to really look at what matters most and then bring their entire focus on that, rather than sometimes getting lost in the chaos and whirlwind of the daily work. So yes, these are a couple of elements which probably I would bring in. And an NLP perspective, if I were to bring a life coaching thing completely, which is off tangent, and I really sometimes try to avoid mixing the two. But if I were to look at it from a personal angle of life coaching, definitely we are humans. At the end of the day, there is so much going on in our life, and we bring our whole self to the office. If you're not authentic, if you're not able to respect the whole self, you would definitely have an issue in their performance. But to what extent you are giving grace is another important element. This is a very difficult balance for leadership, and AI cannot really, fill those shoes, at least at this point of time, to just read that kind of space or bringing empathy to the, to the context and taking the right decision at the right time. If that answers your question, any follow-up question, glad to discuss that.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. So I think you touched upon all nuances of it, and I completely second your thought in terms of what you said, that it's not just an HR's responsibility. It is the responsibility of the managers, of the BU heads, of the leadership as well, to ensure that all the systems, processes, incentives, culture is in place. So I completely agree with that, and I think this is also a very plays a very key role when AI is taking over, because all of these things will go through transition, and there has to be that whole process of change management that one needs to do from an organizational perspective, which cannot be just a single person or a single team's responsibility like HR. So I completely agree with that. In terms of the self that you mentioned, that yes, I think an individual, according to me, brings the most vulnerable part of themselves into their workplace.
True, true.
That is when everything gets exposed. Their will, their skill sets, their mindset, their upbringing, their current environment, both personal as well as professional. You are completely exposed. A lot of people don't understand that. That you are exposed, there's nothing to hide. So how you perform is a cumulative outcome of all of these things. So I completely agree with you also on that NLP aspect that you touched upon. So I'll go further on to job losses, which is now happening everywhere as AI is taking over. I think people like to blame something, a consequence to something. And I know that a lot of job losses that are happening in the industry, people are blaming it on HR. But I know that as an HR, there are so many factors. It could be their performance, cumulative performance over the years. It could be the company's financial performance. It could be a restructuring. It could be so many things. But if you talk to any candidate or if you talk to any organization or read the news articles in general, people are saying job losses to AI. And that's how people are comforting themselves. Now, whenever somebody talks of job loss, there is something called a psychological safety net. That gets broken. Even if you are in a very safe job today and you hear, okay, Amazon downsized so many people and this company downsized so many people, that psychological safety net gets broken. So as an OD professional, how do you deal with building this psychological safety net for employees when building your systems and processes?
Thanks for asking that question. And unfortunately, in my career, I've been in that moment where I'm on the other side, and we've discussed, it's not for AI always, right? AI is right now. There have been job losses for one or the other reasons, and you rightly highlighted. Sometimes it's restructuring, sometimes it's just business not doing well, and you have to take that difficult call. And I have been in that spot multiple times where we had to take that call, and we are going through, as I mentioned, many changes in the organization. And I can tell you, different organizations view it differently, and how they handle makes a lot of difference. From an angle, I'll come to psychological safety and connecting it also, because I think there is definitely a lot of things out there in psychological safety part as well. But from an organization point of view, I think, for example, I would, and I take pride to say that, like, for example, Heyworth has been phenomenal in the way we have handled, some of those elements. And why I'm saying I take pride, because I've seen certain other organizations doing it differently. What we look at is, whenever we have to look at a difficult decision, it's very human. Highly, we really, really make sure it's human. And I have seen otherwise many a times it's not human. Sometimes it's just a tick mark, It doesn't matter, organizations don't care. Also, how you bring back people sometimes whom you let go for one reason, tells a lot about your, confidence in the organization. The psychological safety part, okay, you had a difficult time and you had to take a difficult decision, but I do matter. And when the moment is right, you are bringing that person back. And that really builds a very different confidence in the organization. So that's one piece. But of course, when you look at AI, for example, and if people are going out because of AI, we are assuming here there is a skill set gap. There is, as you rightly said, it's a blame. We are just putting it because AI is taking away a lot of jobs of automation and all. Yes, that would impact an individual. And I think the only place over here is for an individual to build resilience. I would rather, business has to run. Let's be practical also over there. At the end of the day, business needs to make money to ensure rest of the people are employed. If we continue, and it's like a ship, if you continue to have a lot of people who are not able to help you sail, you would make the entire ship sink. It might sound very, very strong from an HR perspective, if I say, but since I am privy to certain other discussions around the P&L part of it, certain other discussions around the internal bandwidth, how we are really functioning, I definitely can say, I won't comment for everyone, but yeah, wherever I have had the opportunity, organizations would look at the best they can to avoid that kind of failing. Yes, sometimes certain leadership might overreact. We had heard like, okay, if it is lockdown, 75% of my population would be working from home. You're taking too fast certain decision, which did not happen. We can see even many organizations which claim that they are still back to offices. It might look like because of AI, you are reducing the workforce right now. You never know for what critical thinking part, and then you might realize that you really need people, but for a different skill set. You can train them. I think the ideal place for HR to be here is find out how humans have an impact on business, that differentiating part. And everyone should know about that. I think once we all know that, if let's say tomorrow I'm being told that Rashi, your job is being taken away because of AI, I need to know as an organization what I could have done differently to have that human impact. And I think that needs real deep level thinking for everyone. It's rethinking. It's a big shift in the way we have been looking at jobs. Like you talked about JDs. JDs have been traditionally built. If you want to segregate it now, probably to the automation part and to the human part, you might see that there are certain things you would need. Maybe certain parts go there, but certain other parts come out. Those roles start evolving. So I think there is churning happening right now. There would be evolution, not evolving. There would be an evolution where both AI and human work together, like engineering, like computers. We have seen it all, right? We have of course seen that how people were afraid of having computers. Today, all of us are working. So AI probably would also go through that phase, but eventually, I do see that that fear would go out, and I really feel. The good thing these days is we are not really looking at job losses and somebody who has lost a job as a stigma. There was a stigma at one point. I have seen in initial days that how it was a big thing. I have lost my job and it is a question on performance only. Now it's not about that. We are looking at people as individuals. Fitment for what you can do for me. Maybe you could not contribute to them, but I need to see what you can do for me. And I do my own assessment. And I see that you are a fit here, great, please join us. And I think that shifting is happening, which would also eventually reduce the anxiety amongst people at a larger level. That I also have seen that a lot of people are open about it now. If earlier they were, this happened, that happened, I had a personal reason to leave the job. Now people are open, I was laid off. And I like and really love that confidence and the culture that we are bringing in the corporate, that why do we need to hide? Let's be open and let's understand what this individual can bring on the table for you. Maybe a fit, may not be a fit, but very, unique individual perspective on each person.
Lovely. I really like this answer. With that, Rashi, I know we would like to extend this for 5-10 more minutes, not more than that. And I have a very small, crisp question, right? It's the kind of questions which I really love to ask. I feel like Karan Johar rapid question, क्या बोलते हैं? Say coffee with Karan वाला, right?
Water.
Yes, water with that.
Coffee with Lakshit, I will say.
Coffee with
Rapid
Lakshit.
fire.
Yeah, awesome. So, Rashi, the question I have is like 3 years from now, describe the role of an HR in just 6 words, right? So, for example, helping humans stay irreplaceable next to AI, or something very which you think will be very relevant in the next 3 years. What would be your like 6 word or a line?
Wow, that's quite rapid fire, but maybe I may not be as rapid as you would expect on this question. See, I think I strongly feel about the business part of HR. I strongly feel if we don't contribute to business, we are really not doing the reason why we are here. So I would say contributing to business in a Bani world, ensuring you are probably creating an architecture for human impact environment and building a strong culture for machine and human together. So something on that note, maybe I would need pen and paper to structure it a little more formally. But I think the 3 things I really want as a CHRO of future in the coming days would be ensuring that you are really creating, the way I said, the JDs need to have that clarity and the roles need to probably reframe. So you are at the helm of it. So as HR, as the senior leaders, we're at the helm of seeing how the world is changing. So bring that into your agenda right here, of course. Bani world is here, it's not VUCA anymore, and it is definitely going to be more difficult to manage this, inconsistency and incomprehensibility. AI does add to that. So yes, so I think these are the 3 things how I would like to state it.
Awesome. With this, we come to the end of this podcast. Thank you, Rashi, for giving out time.